6 months after the failed presentation to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Lisa Carter received an unexpected message. It came directly from Elder Vorthak on Atlantis Prime, and the content surprised everyone on the diplomatic team. Ambassador Carter, the message began in Elder Vorthak's musical voice. We request your presence for an important announcement. Please bring your full team. What we have discovered may change how the galaxy views both humans and the naming incident. When the New Horizons arrived at Atlantis Prime, Lisa and her team found the world transformed once again. But this time the changes were not chaotic. The crystal platform had been expanded with new sections that clearly separated different types of visitors. Tourist areas were marked in multiple languages, while research and diplomatic zones were kept separate. Kate Sullivan met them with a smile, the first genuine smile Lisa had seen from her in months. You're going to want to see this, she said as she led them through the underwater tunnels. The Zephyrians have been conducting their own study of human behavior and the effects of the naming incident. In the High Council chamber, Elder Vorthak waited with what appeared to be the largest gathering of Zephyrians Lisa had ever seen. Representatives from different cities and regions were present, along with several young Zephyrians who carried data tablets and recording devices. Ambassador Carter, Elder Vorthak began, we have spent these months observing and learning. What we discovered has surprised us greatly. Council member Thelandra gestured to the young Zephyrians with their devices. Our youth have been studying human visitors and human culture extensively. They have made remarkable discoveries about your species' nature. One of the young Zephyrians, who introduced herself as Scholar Kelnara, stepped forward. We analyzed thousands of human stories, movies, and entertainment programs. We also interviewed hundreds of human visitors to understand their motivations. Her harmonics carried excitement as she continued. Humans do not just create stories about what they encounter. They create stories because they are trying to understand and connect with new experiences. The fictional Atlantis was not just entertainment. It was humans dreaming about what an advanced underwater civilization might be like. Dr. Jake Morrison looked intrigued. Are you saying that human mythology is actually a form of preparation for real encounters? Scholar Kelnara's response surprised everyone. Exactly. When humans named our world Atlantis Prime, they were not imposing fiction on reality. They were recognizing that reality had exceeded their fiction. In your culture, this is a form of highest praise. Elder Vorthak took over the explanation. We have learned that human tourists who visit our world go through a predictable process. First, they arrive expecting to find their fictional Atlantis. Then, they discover our real civilization. Finally, they become fascinated by the truth, which they find more amazing than their stories. Amy Brooks shook her head in amazement. You're saying that the confusion actually leads to better understanding? We have documented this process, replied Council Member Shalavek. Humans who visit expecting ancient mysteries leave understanding. Crystal technology, harmonic communication, and our actual history. The fictional expectation becomes a bridge to real knowledge. Captain Danny Rodriguez felt a mix of relief and bewilderment. But what about all the complaints from other species? The concerns about human storytelling affecting cultural contact. Elder Vorthak's harmonics carried what sounded like amusement. That is why we asked you here today. We have prepared a presentation for the Galactic Council, but this time we will be presenting on humanity's behalf and distributed to all member species as a protective measure. Dr. Foster sat back and her Chambassador Lisa Carter stood in the briefing room aboard the New Horizons, staring at the wall display that showed news reports from across human space. Every channel was covering the Galactic Law 1 story, and the reactions were not what she had expected. Look at this, said Dr. Jake Morrison, pointing to a news feed from Europa Station. The colonists there are actually celebrating. They think being the subject of the first Galactic Law makes humans special. Captain Danny Rodriguez shook his head as he watched another report. And this one from Mars shows protesters demanding that we ignore the law and keep naming alien worlds anyway. They say it's our right as explorers. Amy Brooks, who had been monitoring social media across the solar system, looked up from her tablet with concern. The worst part is that tourism to Atlantis Prime has actually increased since the law passed. People want to visit the world that made humans famous throughout the galaxy. Lisa rubbed her temples. The diplomatic crisis had become a public relations nightmare. Instead of being embarrassed by their mistake, many humans seemed proud that they had confused an entire galaxy. We need to fix this. Earth's reputation depends on it. The team had spent weeks developing a plan to address the situation. Their first step would be returning to Atlantis Prime to apologize formally to the Zephyrians. Then they would present a solution to the Galactic Council that might restore some of humanity's diplomatic credibility. When the New Horizons arrived at Atlantis Prime, they found the situation even worse than before. The crystal platform where they had first landed was now crowded with human tourists, vendors selling authentic Atlantean souvenirs, and documentary crews filming everything. Kate Sullivan met them at the landing platform, looking exhausted. "It's been chaos," she told Lisa as they walked toward the underwater city. 3 more documentary teams arrived this week. One of them is convinced that the Zephyrians are hiding ancient human artifacts in their deepest cities. Dr. Chris Parker joined them as they entered the transparent tunnels leading to the High Council chamber. "The Zephyrians have been incredibly patient, but I can see the strain. Some of the younger ones are starting to avoid areas where humans gather." In the crystal city below, they could see groups of human tourists swimming in diving suits, taking pictures of everything. Some were using metal detectors on the seafloor, searching for what they imagined might be ancient Atlantean relics. "Elder Vorthak agreed to meet with you," Kate continued. "But he's bringing the entire High Council this time. I think they want to discuss ending the human presence here completely." When they reached the council chamber, Lisa was struck by how different the atmosphere felt compared to their first meeting. The Zephyrians still showed proper courtesy, but the warm welcome was gone. Elder Vorthak's harmonics carried undertones of sadness and frustration. "Ambassador Carter," Elder Vorthak began, "we have considered the situation carefully. While we appreciate that your naming of our world was meant as an honor, the consequences have become difficult for our people to bear." Lisa bowed deeply in the Zephyrian manner. "Elder Vorthak, I come before you to offer our sincere apologies. We did not foresee how our choice of name would affect your world and people." "We understand that you meant no harm," replied Council Member Thalandra. "But our young ones now hear more human stories about fictional Atlantis than they do about our own true history. Some human visitors have even suggested that we have forgotten our real origins." Dr. Morrison stepped forward. "Elder Vorthak, we have discovered something important that we believe you should know. We researched the original harmonic name for your world, the one you used before we suggested Atlantis Prime." The Zephyrians looked interested despite their frustration. Elder Vorthak gestured for him to continue. "Your world's true name translates to something far more beautiful than anything we could have suggested," Morrison continued. "Eternal Blue. Sanctuary of our ancestors speaks of deep reverence for your heritage and your connection to this world. When we named it Atlantis Prime, we unknowingly replaced something sacred with something fictional." The council members exchanged harmonics among themselves. Elder Vorthak's expression seemed to soften slightly. "You have learned to understand our language better since your first visit." Lieutenant Ben Walsh, who had been studying Zephyrian culture intensively since the crisis began, added, "We also learned that in your tradition, names carry the essence of what they describe. By giving your world a name from our mythology, we accidentally gave it a fictional essence instead of honoring its real one." Communications Officer Megan Price pulled up recordings on her tablet. "We would like to propose something, Elder Vorthak. What if we formally returned your world's original name for all diplomatic and cultural purposes?" But Elder Vorthak surprised them with his response. "We have discussed this possibility extensively. However, we have observed something unexpected. The attention your name has brought to our world, while confusing, has also brought opportunities." Councilmember Shalavek spoke for the first time. "Young beings from many worlds now know that we exist. Before your naming ceremony, most of the galaxy had never heard of our civilization. Some of your human visitors, once they learn our true history, become genuinely interested in our culture," added Thalandra. Dr. Parker's research has helped us understand our own crystal growing techniques better than we have in generations. Lisa felt a glimmer of hope. Are you saying that you might want to keep the name Atlantis Prime? Elder Vorthak's harmonics carried complex emotions. We propose a compromise. We will keep Atlantis Prime as our official galactic designation, but we will also reclaim our true harmonic name for use in our own culture and in formal ceremonies. The humans looked at each other in surprise. This was not the outcome they had expected. However, Elder Vorthak continued, we have conditions. You must help us educate human visitors about our real history and culture. No more treasure hunters or people seeking ancient Earth connections. We agree completely, Lisa said immediately. The real challenge came when they returned to present their solution to the Galactic Council. Lisa stood before the same assembly that had passed Galactic Law 1, but this time she brought a different kind of presentation. Honored delegates, she began, humanity acknowledges that our naming practices caused confusion and disruption. We propose the establishment of a universal naming protocol to prevent such misunderstandings in the future. Dr. Morrison activated a holographic display showing their proposed guidelines. All species offering naming privileges would first provide cultural context about their world and their naming traditions. The species being offered the honor would share the cultural significance of any proposed names. But the presentation began to go wrong almost immediately. The examples Morrison had prepared to illustrate appropriate naming practices only made things worse. For instance, he said, names like New Geneva or Concordia Station draw from Earth locations and concepts of harmony. The Hive Collective immediately responded with agitation. Geneva is an Earth location where humans make agreements. Are you suggesting that species should name their worlds after places where your species conducts business? Morrison tried to clarify. No, Geneva represents diplomacy and international cooperation. But it is still a specific Earth location, pointed out the Corinthian delegate. This proves that humans cannot separate their own world from their naming of others. The situation deteriorated further when Dr. Foster tried to explain the difference between mythological names and historical names. Atlantis is fictional, but Geneva is real, she said. How would we know which Earth references are real and which are fictional? Demanded the Crystalline Collective representative. Amy Brooks attempted to save the presentation by offering examples of names that avoided Earth references entirely. We could use descriptive names like Crystal Harbor or Peaceful Depths. Crystal Harbor suggests that the world exists for human harbor activities, the Aquatic Alliance delegate objected, and Peaceful Depths implies that deeper areas are not peaceful. Every suggestion the humans made seemed to create new problems. When they proposed using numbers or coordinates, species complained that it removed all honor from the naming ceremony. When they suggested using alien language elements, delegates worried about mispronunciation and cultural appropriation. Captain Rodriguez, watching the presentation fall apart, realized that they were making the same mistake again. They were trying to solve an alien cultural problem using human solutions. Honored delegates, he interrupted, I believe we are approaching this incorrectly. Instead of humans proposing naming guidelines, perhaps each species should define what kinds of names would honor them. The chamber fell quiet as delegates considered this suggestion. The moderator spoke thoughtfully. Captain Rodriguez suggests that the responsibility for naming guidelines should rest with the species offering the naming privilege, not with those receiving it. That could work, admitted the draconian delegate. We would know what kinds of names carry honor in our culture, but the Vegan Confederation representative raised another concern. The problem remains that humans create fictional stories about everything they encounter. How? 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened for another emergency session, but instead of humans defending themselves, Elder Vorthak stood at the speaker's platform with a delegation of Zephyrians. Honored delegates, Elder Vorthak began, we come before you to share what we have learned about humans and their naming of our world. The council chamber buzzed with interest. The Zephyrians were highly respected throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and careful analysis. Scholar Kelnara activated a holographic display showing statistics and data We have analyzed the results of human cultural contact with our world. Tourism has increased by 400%, but more importantly, genuine cultural understanding has increased by 800%. The humans who visit our world learn more about Zephyrian culture in a single visit than most species learn through formal diplomatic exchanges, added council member Thelandra. Their storytelling nature makes them actively engaged learners. The Corinthian delegate remained skeptical. But they still confuse fiction with reality. How is this beneficial? Elder Vorthak's response was thoughtful. They do not confuse fiction with reality. They use fiction as a starting point for understanding reality. When they named our world after their mythical Atlantis, they were saying that our real civilization was worthy of their highest imaginative ideals. The crystalline collective chimed with interest. Are you suggesting that human storytelling is actually a form of cultural appreciation? More than that, Scholar Kelnara replied. Human stories prepare them to be amazed by real encounters. A species that dreams of underwater cities is ready to appreciate real underwater cities. A species that imagines crystal palaces can understand the value of crystal technology. The Vegan Confederation representative rustled its leaves thoughtfully. But what about the commercial exploitation, the theme parks and movies? Elder Vorthak had an answer for this too. We have studied human entertainment about our world. While some of it is inaccurate, it consistently portrays underwater civilizations as advanced, peaceful, and worthy of respect. Even their fictional versions honor the concept of our society. The debate that followed was unlike anything the Galactic Council had experienced. Instead of condemning human behavior, species began discussing whether humanity's storytelling nature might actually be valuable for galactic culture. The Hive Collective spoke through their thousands of voices. We have reconsidered human naming patterns. The word prime that they use frequently does not claim superiority. It indicates that they consider something worthy of being a primary example of its type. The Aquatic Alliance delegate added, Our intelligence reports show that humans have created entertainment about many types of civilizations, almost all portrayed positively. They dream of meeting species like all of us. Dr. Helen Foster, who had been watching the session with growing amazement, was invited to speak. Honored delegates, what Elder Vorthak has described is accurate. Humans create stories about aliens because we hope to meet aliens. We create stories about advanced civilizations because we want to find advanced civilizations. The moderator considered all the testimony carefully. So human storytelling is not a threat to cultural contact, but preparation for cultural contact. That appears to be correct, Elder Vorthak confirmed. Species that worry about humans creating stories about them should instead consider what kinds of stories humans create. They consistently show respect for advancement, wisdom, and peaceful cooperation. The vote that followed was much closer than the first one, but the result was decisive. Galactic Law Number 1 was officially amended. The new law read, Galactic Law Number 1. Never let humans name your homeworld unless you are prepared for them to become genuinely excited about it and want to visit frequently. But the real surprise came with a second resolution. Several species, led by the Zephyrians, proposed the creation of a human cultural exchange program. Instead of avoiding human storytelling, participating species would actively engage with it as a form of cultural diplomacy. The Crystalline Collective was the first to volunteer. We would like humans to create stories about crystal beings. We are curious what their imagination would suggest about our capabilities. The Aquatic Alliance followed. Human stories about water worlds might help us understand how other species perceive aquatic life. Even the Draconian Empire expressed interest. We have heard that humans have many stories about dragon-like beings. We would like to understand why your species finds our appearance so fascinating. Ambassador Lisa Carter watched in amazement as species after species signed up for the cultural exchange program. The crisis that had started with a simple naming ceremony had somehow turned into the galaxy's first systematic study of human creativity as a diplomatic tool. Elder Vorthak approached the human delegation as the session ended. Ambassador Carter, you should know that Atlantis Prime has become the most visited world in this sector of the galaxy. But now visitors come not just to see a fictional place made real, but to understand how humans and Zephyrians learned to appreciate each other's cultures. Captain Rodriguez shook his head with a smile. So we accidentally created a model for cultural exchange by making a naming mistake? Not a mistake, Elder Vorthak corrected. An opportunity that neither of our species was wise enough to recognize at first. 3 years later, Ambassador Lisa Carter stood in her new office as director of the Department of Interspecies Naming Conventions. The walls were covered with certificates from dozens of worlds that had participated in the Human Cultural Exchange program. Her desk held applications from species requesting human names for their colonies, research stations, and even some minor homeworlds. The sign on her door read, "Remember Atlantis Prime, sometimes the best dip." The starship New Horizons drifted through the dark space between stars, its silver hull catching the light from a distant blue sun. Inside the ship, Ambassador Lisa Carter stood at the observation deck window, watching the alien world grow larger as they approached. The planet looked like a giant blue marble, covered almost entirely by water that sparkled under its sun's rays. "First contact with the Zephyrians in less than 6 hours," said Dr. Jake Morrison as he joined her at the window. The linguist carried a tablet filled with notes about the alien language they had been studying for months. "Are you nervous?" Lisa smiled and shook her head. "Excited, not nervous. This is what we trained for. The Zephyrians have been watching us for 30 years. Now they finally want to meet face to face." Amy Brooks, the cultural advisor, walked up behind them. She had spent weeks reading every report about Zephyrian society that the long-range scouts had gathered. "Their cities are underwater," she said, pointing at the blue planet. "Crystal towers beneath the waves. The pictures from the probe missions were beautiful." Captain Danny Rodriguez's voice came over the ship's speakers. "All senior staff to the briefing room. We need to go over the ceremony one more time." The 3 humans made their way through the corridors of the New Horizons. The ship was small compared to the massive military vessels in Earth's fleet, but it was perfect for diplomatic missions. Every room was designed to make visitors feel welcome, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture. In the briefing room, Captain Rodriguez stood next to a large screen showing images of the Zephyrians. The aliens looked like tall, graceful beings, with smooth blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer like water. Their eyes were large and dark, and they had long fingers with webbing between them. "Remember," Rodriguez said to the assembled team, "the Zephyrians value ceremony and respect above all else. They have agreed to this meeting because they believe humans might be worthy allies. Let's not disappoint them." Dr. Morrison pulled up his language files. "Their communication is partly vocal and partly harmonic. They create sounds that our ears can barely hear. It took our computers months to figure out their basic language patterns." "What about their customs?" asked Lisa. Amy consulted her notes. "They live in family groups called circles. Each circle has a leader, and all the circles are led by a high council. The most important thing to them is showing respect for their ancestors and their homeworld." The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the windows they could see the endless blue ocean stretching to the horizon. Here and there, they spotted the tops of crystal spires breaking the surface like strange islands. "Incoming transmission from the Zephyrian High Council," reported the communications officer. The main screen flickered and showed the inside of what looked like a vast underwater chamber. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. In the center of the room stood several Zephyrians in flowing robes that moved like seaweed in an ocean current. The largest Zephyrian stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that made it pleasant to listen to. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Elder Vorthak of the High Council. We welcome you to our world." Lisa stepped in front of the screen and bowed slightly as Amy had taught her. "Thank you, Elder Vorthak. I am Ambassador Lisa Carter, representing the people of Earth. We are honored by your invitation. Your ship may land at the coordinates we are sending you," Elder Vorthak said. "Our crystal city of Thalandor will receive you. There we will hold the ceremony of first meeting." The screen went dark, and Captain Rodriguez began preparing for landing. The New Horizons descended through clouds and mist until it reached a platform that seemed to be made entirely of the same crystal material as the spires they had seen. As they disembarked, the humans were amazed by what they saw. The platform was surrounded by water, but beneath the clear blue surface they could see a vast city of crystal towers and flowing walkways. Zephyrian citizens moved through the water with graceful swimming motions, while others walked along transparent tubes that allowed them to breathe air underwater. "Welcome to Thalandor," said a young Zephyrian who met them at the landing platform. "I am Keeper Shalnara. I will guide you to the ceremony chamber." They followed her down a ramp that led into the water, but instead of getting wet, they found themselves walking through a tunnel filled with air. The crystal walls were transparent, giving them a perfect view of the underwater city around them. Fish swam between the towers, but these were not ordinary fish. They had bright colors and patterns that seemed almost artificial. Some of them appeared to be following specific paths, as if they were part of the city's transportation system. "Your city is incredible," Amy said to their guide. Keeper Shalnara made a sound that might have been pleasure. "Thalandor has been our home for 10,000 of your years. It was built by our ancestors using techniques we still do not fully understand." They reached a large chamber where the High Council waited. Elder Vorthak stood at the center of a circle of other Zephyrians, all wearing the same flowing robes. The walls of the chamber showed images that seemed to move like living memories. "Humans of Earth," Elder Vorthak began, "we have watched your species for many cycles. You are young, but you show promise. Your people have passion and creativity that we find interesting." Lisa bowed again. "We hope to learn from your wisdom and experience, Elder Vorthak." "Today, we offer you a great honor," the elder continued. "In our tradition, when we meet a new species that we believe worthy of friendship, we allow them to give our homeworld a name in their language. This name becomes part of our identity in the greater galaxy." The humans looked at each other in surprise. This was not something they had expected. Elder Vorthak gestured to the images on the walls. "Our world has been known to us by the harmonic designation that translates roughly as Eternal Blue Sanctuary of our ancestors. But we would be honored if you would give it a name that your people can speak easily." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. He thought about the beautiful underwater city, the crystal spires, and the graceful way the Zephyrians moved through their aquatic world. It reminded him of the old stories from Earth about a lost city beneath the waves. "We are deeply honored by this gesture," he said. "Looking at your magnificent underwater civilization, we would like to suggest the name Atlantis Prime, after a legendary underwater city from our own world's ancient stories." Elder Vorthak consulted with the other council members in their harmonic language. After a few moments, he turned back to the humans with what seemed to be approval. "Atlantis Prime," he repeated, the word sounding strange but not unpleasant in his musical voice. "This name has a good sound. We accept this gift of friendship." The ceremony that followed was beautiful and solemn. The Zephyrians sang in their harmonic language while the walls of the chamber displayed the history of their world. At the end, Elder Vorthak formally announced that their homeworld would be known as Atlantis Prime in all communications with other species. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, they felt proud of how well the first contact had gone. They had no idea that they had just set in motion a series of events that would lead to the first law specifically written about human behavior in galactic history. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called for the first time in over 50 years. In the massive chamber on the neutral station of Harmony Point, representatives from dozens of alien civilizations gathered around the circular meeting platform. The air buzzed with tension as translators worked overtime to handle the mix of languages, harmonics, and chemical signals that the different species used to communicate. Dr. Helen Foster sat in the human delegation section, feeling very small surrounded by beings that ranged from towering crystalline entities to swarms of insect-like creatures that moved as one mind. She had been Earth's chief xenolinguist for 15 years. But she had never imagined she would be defending humanity's naming choices in front of the entire galaxy. The Corinthian delegate rose first. The reptilian being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shifted color to show emotion. Right now, those scales were a deep red that everyone knew meant anger. "Honored Council," the Corinthian hissed, "we must address the dangerous precedent set by the humans. They have named the Zephyrian Homeworld after what they claim is a mythical place from their own world. But we have discovered that humans have legends about many lost civilizations. What happens when they learn about our colony world Corinth Prime? Will they claim it is connected to their ancient Corinth?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several other delegates began consulting their translation devices and cultural databases. The Corinthian continued, "Already, human tourists are visiting our outer colonies, asking about connections to Earth's ancient Greece. They seem to believe that any similarity in names means a connection to their own history. The Vegan Confederation's representative, a plant-like being with leaves that rustled when it spoke, added its concern. We have monitored human entertainment networks. They create fictional stories about places that sound like our world names. What if they decide our homeworld Vagera is connected to their Earth vegetables? Will they expect us to provide food for their entire species?" Dr. Foster stood up, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes, sensors, and other detection methods focusing on her. "Honored delegates, I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding about human intentions." The council moderator, an ancient being whose species had founded the galactic community centuries ago, gestured for her to continue. "Speak, human representative." When Captain Rodriguez suggested the name Atlantis Prime, he was offering a compliment to the Zephyrians. In human culture, Atlantis represents the ideal of an advanced, beautiful underwater civilization. He was comparing their real achievements to our most admired fictional society. The Draconian Empire's delegate, a massive being with armored skin and glowing eyes, rose from its section. "This is precisely the problem. Humans confuse fiction with reality. How can we trust a species that cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is imagined?" Dr. Foster felt her heart sink as more delegates began expressing similar concerns. The Crystalline Collective's representative chimed with harmonics that translated as deep worry. "We had planned to offer humans the honor of naming our homeworld as a gesture of friendship. But now we fear they might call it Crystal Palace and turn it into an entertainment destination. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans have already built recreational facilities based on their misunderstanding of Zephyrian culture," added the Aquatic Alliance delegate. "They have created false versions of underwater cities for their own entertainment, mixing fiction with the real achievements of the Zephyrians." The chamber erupted in sounds of concern, anger, and confusion as different species began talking at once. The moderator had to use the station's harmonic dampeners to restore order. On Atlantis Prime, Elder Vorthak was watching the Galactic Council session through a quantum communication link. The other members of the High Council had gathered in their ceremonial chamber, their expressions growing more troubled as the debate continued. "They speak of us as if we are victims," said Council Member Thelandra, her harmonics carrying notes of sadness, "but we agreed to accept the human name for our world. We participated in this ceremony willingly." Elder Vorthak's response carried complex overtones that showed both regret and confusion. "We offered the naming privilege as a gesture of respect and friendship. In our culture, to name something is to honor it. But it seems that human naming carries different meanings that we did not understand." Keeper Shalnara, who had been working closely with the human liaison team, added her observations. "The human visitors are not malicious. They are excited and curious. But their excitement is based on misunderstandings about our true nature and history." Back at the Galactic Council, the situation was getting worse. The Hive Collective, speaking through thousands of small insect-like creatures that moved in perfect coordination, expressed their concern in a way that made every translator in the chamber work overtime. "We have analyzed human naming patterns," the Hive announced. "They frequently use words from their own languages that have multiple meanings. The word prime appears in many of their world names. We calculate a 73% probability that they would name our homeworld Geneva Prime, thinking it connects to some Earth location called Geneva." Dr. Foster tried to interrupt. "Geneva is just a city on Earth. It's not a mythical place." "But how would we know the difference?" demanded the Corinthian delegate. Your species treats both real and fictional places with equal reverence in your naming systems. The debate continued for hours. Species after species stood up to express concerns about human naming practices. The Silicon-based collective worried about being associated with Earth's computer technology. The gas giant dwellers feared connections to Earth's atmospheric phenomena. Even the energy beings who rarely involve themselves in physical matters expressed concern about humans naming their dimensional home after some Earth concept they couldn't understand. Dr. Foster found herself overwhelmed by the scope of the misunderstanding. Every attempt she made to explain human cultural references only seemed to make things worse. When she mentioned that humans had many fictional stories about lost civilizations, space adventures, and alien encounters, the delegates became even more concerned. So humans create fictional stories about meeting alien species? Asked the moderator. Well, yes, Dr. Foster admitted. It's a popular form of entertainment. And now they have met real alien species, which they are treating like they're fictional stories. Dr. Foster realized she was trapped in a logical corner. It's not that simple. Humans can distinguish between fiction and reality. The problem is that the name Atlantis carries emotional and cultural significance that creates excitement. The Aquatic Alliance delegate made a sound like rushing water, but this excitement causes them to behave as if fiction and reality are the same thing. They visit Atlantis Prime expecting to find things that exist only in their stories. Meanwhile, on Earth, the situation was spiraling further out of control. The Atlantis Prime tourism industry had become a billion-dollar business. Travel agencies were offering packages that promised authentic Atlantean experiences and meetings with the descendants of Earth's lost civilization. In a conference room in New York, emergency meetings were being held by Earth's government officials. Secretary of Interstellar Affairs Robert Chen was reviewing reports from Atlantis Prime with growing alarm. The Zephyrians are being polite about it, he told his staff. But our cultural attaché reports that they're becoming increasingly frustrated with human visitors who refuse to accept the truth about Zephyrian history. His assistant, Maria Santos, pulled up the latest incident reports. Yesterday, a group of tourists demanded to be shown the ancient Atlantean technology they were sure the Zephyrians were hiding. When the Zephyrians explained that their crystal technology was their own invention, the tourists accused them of being part of a cover-up. Back at the Galactic Council, the debate was reaching a climax. The moderator called for order as delegate, after delegate expressed their loss of confidence in human judgment. The evidence is clear, announced the Draconian Empire delegate. Humans cannot be trusted with the sacred responsibility of naming homeworlds. Their cultural confusion between fiction and reality makes them unsuitable for this honor, the crystalline collective chimed in agreement. We propose a formal resolution to prevent this situation from recurring with other species. Dr. Foster made one final attempt to save the situation. Honored delegates, I ask you to consider that this was an honest mistake born of good intentions. Humans were trying to honor the Zephyrians with a name that represented beauty and advancement in our culture. The moderator considered her words for a long moment. Dr. Foster, your species' intentions may have been honorable, but intentions do not eliminate consequences. The confusion and cultural disruption caused by this naming incident has affected not just the Zephyrians, but the entire galactic community's confidence in human judgment. The vote was swift and decisive. By a margin of 47-3 with humans abstaining, the Galactic Council passed its first law specifically addressing human behavior. Galactic Law Number 1, announced the moderator. Never let humans name your homeworld. This law shall be recorded in all galactic databases. 3 months had passed since the ceremony on Atlantis Prime, and the news had spread across human space like wildfire. On Earth, the Global Broadcasting Network was running its 5th special report about the discovery of the real Atlantis in the past week alone. This is truly remarkable, said news anchor Patricia Wells as she stood in front of a large display showing images of the crystal underwater cities. Humanity has found what appears to be the actual inspiration for our ancient legends of Atlantis. The similarities are simply too amazing to be coincidence. Dr. Helen Foster sat in her office at the University of Chicago, watching the broadcast with growing concern. As Earth's leading expert on mythology and ancient civilizations, she had been fielding calls from reporters for weeks. Every interview she gave trying to explain that Atlantis was just a story seemed to make things worse. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Dr. Foster, there's another call from Pacific Tourism Corporation. They want to know if you'll endorse their new vacation package to Atlantis Prime." Helen rubbed her temples. "Tell them no, just like I told the other 15 companies that called today." Meanwhile, on the moon colony of Luna Base, the administrative offices were overwhelmed with applications. Office manager Carl Bennett looked at his computer screen in disbelief. "We have over 50,000 applications for tourist visas to Atlantis Prime," he told his supervisor. "That's more than we usually get for all alien worlds combined in a whole year." The applications were getting stranger by the day. Some people claimed they were descendants of the original Atlanteans and wanted to return to their ancestral home. Others insisted they had psychic connections to the lost civilization and needed to make contact with their cosmic cousins. Back on Atlantis Prime, Cultural Liaison Officer Kate Sullivan was having the worst 3 months of her career. She stood on the crystal platform where the New Horizons had first landed, watching another human transport ship arrive. This was the 4th one this week. "How many passengers this time?" asked Dr. Chris Parker, the xenobiologist who had been assigned to study Zephyrian society. His research had been completely disrupted by the constant stream of human visitors. Kate checked her tablet. 85. Most of them are here for the Mystical Atlantis Experience tour package. They're expecting to see ancient ruins and mysterious artifacts. The passengers began filing off the transport ship, many of them carrying underwater cameras and metal detectors. Kate noticed that several were wearing T-shirts with slogans like, "I found Atlantis" and "Descendant of the Deep." A middle-aged woman with bright red hair approached Kate with excitement in her eyes. "Excuse me, are you the tour guide? I'm Nancy Phillips from Denver. I've been studying Atlantis since I was 12 years old. Can you take me to the ancient temples where they perform the ritual sacrifices?" Kate tried to keep her voice calm. "Ma'am, there are no ancient temples here. The Zephyrians are a peaceful species who built their cities using advanced crystal technology. They don't perform sacrifices." Nancy looked disappointed. "But the brochure said this was the real Atlantis. Where are the rings of water and the golden statues?" Before Kate could answer, another tourist interrupted. "Are those the Atlanteans?" he asked, pointing at a group of Zephyrians who were swimming past in the crystal tubes below. "They're called Zephyrians," Kate explained. "They're the native inhabitants of this world. They're not related to any Earth legends." The man looked confused. "But if this is Atlantis, they must be Atlanteans. Maybe they just forgot their true origins." Dr. Parker watched this exchange with growing frustration. He had been trying to conduct interviews with Zephyrian scientists about their crystal growing techniques, but the constant interruptions from tourists had made serious research almost impossible. Keeper Shalnara approached them, moving with the graceful gliding motion typical of her species. "Dr. Parker, Elder Vorthak wishes to speak with you and Officer Sullivan. He seems troubled about something." They followed her through the transparent tunnels to the High Council chamber. Elder Vorthak was there with several other council members, and they were having what appeared to be an intense discussion in their harmonic language. "Elder Vorthak," Kate said with a respectful bow, "you wanted to see us?" The elder turned to face them, and even though his alien features were hard for humans to read, both Kate and Chris could sense his confusion and concern. "Officer Sullivan, Dr. Parker, we are having difficulty understanding the behavior of your recent visitors. They ask strange questions about our history and seem disappointed when we tell them the truth about our civilization." Kate sighed. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Elder. The name we gave your world has caused some confusion among humans. Many of your people seem to believe we are connected to some ancient Earth civilization," Elder Vorthak continued. "They ask about ruins that do not exist and technologies we do not possess. Some have even suggested that we are the descendants of humans who lived on Earth long ago. Dr. Parker stepped forward. Elder Vorthak, Atlantis is a fictional place. From human mythology. It was described by an ancient Greek philosopher as a cautionary tale, not as historical fact. When Captain Rodriguez suggested the name, he meant it as a compliment to your beautiful underwater cities. The elder was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. So your people named our world after something that never existed? That's correct, Kate said, feeling embarrassed. And now many humans think they've found the real Atlantis. Back on Earth, the situation was getting even more complicated. 3 major movie studios had announced competing films about Atlantis Prime. The first trailer for Atlantis Reborn had already been released, showing dramatic scenes of humans discovering ancient alien technology beneath the waves. In Los Angeles, producer Rick Morgan was in a meeting with his special effects team. "I want the Zephyrians to look more mysterious," he told them. "Give them glowing eyes and ancient-looking robes. Make them seem like they're hiding secrets about Earth's past." "But sir," said his assistant, "the actual Zephyrians don't look like that at all. We have real footage from the diplomatic missions." Rick waved his hand dismissively. "Reality is boring. Audiences want mystery and wonder. We're selling the dream of Atlantis, not some documentary about fish people." Meanwhile, construction had begun on 3 different Atlantis Prime Experience theme parks. The largest one, being built in Florida, promised visitors the chance to walk through the real Atlantis and meet the descendants of ancient Earth's lost civilization. The park's designer, Michelle Torres, was working with a team of architects to create underwater tunnels and crystal structures that looked like the real Zephyrian cities, but with added elements from Earth's Atlantis legends. "We need more golden statues," she told her team, "and add some mysterious symbols on the walls. People expect Atlantis to have ancient writing and hidden messages." Her assistant looked concerned. "Shouldn't we try to be accurate to what Atlantis Prime actually looks like?" Michelle shook her head. "People don't want accuracy. They want the Atlantis from their imagination. We're giving them the fantasy they've been dreaming about since childhood." On Atlantis Prime, Elder Vorthak called another meeting with the human liaison team. This time, more council members were present, and the atmosphere felt more serious. "Officer Sullivan," Elder Vorthak began, "we have been discussing this situation with great concern. The name your people gave our world has brought us much attention, but not the kind of attention we expected when we offered this honor." Kate nodded. "We understand your concerns, Elder. The human government is working on ways to address the misunderstandings. We do not wish to seem ungrateful," the Elder continued. "The ceremony of naming was meant to create friendship between our peoples. But we are troubled by visitors who seem more interested in their own fantasies than in learning about our actual culture." Dr. Parker had been thinking about this problem for weeks. "Elder Vorthak, would it help if we held educational sessions for human visitors? We could explain Zephyrian history and culture before they tour your cities." Elder Vorthak considered this suggestion. "That might be helpful, but we worry that the damage has already been done. Your people's stories about us are spreading faster than the truth." As if to prove his point, another transport ship appeared in the sky above the crystal platform. This one was larger than the others, and it carried a banner that read, "Atlantis, Prime Archaeological Expedition." Kate watched the ship land with a sinking feeling. She recognized the logo on the side of the ship. It belonged to one of Earth's most sensational documentary producers, the kind who specialized in programs about ancient aliens and lost civilizations. "Elder Vorthak," she said quietly, "I think our problems are about to get much worse.